Hey everybody, welcome back. It's patch 8.4. If you've been watching my videos for the past couple months, you know that I play a lot of Dark Harvest on all three of my mains, Udyr, Jax, and Xin Zhao. Dark Harvest is my favorite keystone rune in the game because of its unmatched burst damage in the late game. Even if the enemy champions are usually difficult targets to kill, like Fizz or Talon, with Dark Harvest, it could only take you one stun combo in the late game to 100 to 0 a squishy carry like that, even if you want to build semi-tanky. This combination of ridiculous burst damage combined with enough defense to teamfight or dive towers gives you a great power. You get to choose which damage carry on the enemy team you think is the strongest and the biggest threat, and that you want to take out of the team fight immediately at the start of the fight to help your team win. So the enemy Vayne has 15 kills, wait until your flash is up and use your flash to kill her. If you choose your engages carefully, there is very little counterplay against getting killed in one combo. So this sounds great, right? Well, why then is this rune not more popular? In my opinion, the learning curve of Dark Harvest is steep, and it takes a long time to learn it to the point of actually being strong with it and winning more than losing. It has a weaker early game than the more popular runes like Pressy Attack, and on top of the weak early game, if you do fall behind early, it is the most difficult keystone rune in the game to recover with. Basically, it makes both of your early successes and losses magnified. It makes your early kills more rewarding because you can snowball out of control more easily, but it also punishes you harder if you have too many failed early ganks or if you die early. I think a lot of players probably try this rune for a few games. Many of them probably lose all three of their first games just like I did, but then they stop there. They don't realize the massive potential that could come out of it, and they don't think about all of the important details like, what time do cannon minions reach top lane? What about mid lane? This is very useful to know for planning your jungle route. Well, to me, this is a good thing that Dark Harvest is so complicated and unpopular because it might reduce the chance of this rune being nerfed. And meanwhile, a small handful of committed players can still master it and abuse it indefinitely to carry games. Hopefully, this guide will teach you everything you need to know about optimizing Dark Harvest so you too can reach an all-time high in ranked by maining it like I did. First, let's look at the rune description, and I'm going to give you a few general tips before moving on to more specific topics. Champions, cannon minions, and large jungle monsters drop souls when they die. Pick up these souls to make your next auto attack deal bonus damage to a champion or tower. This empowered auto attack expires after 20 seconds if not used, but in the late game, after collecting 150 souls, the lifespan increases to 5 minutes, which makes it a lot easier to actually use your procs. The bonus damage has some AD and AP scaling, but the most important number in this formula is the soul essence collected, because in the late game this could be up at 300 or 400. That's going to translate to 300 or 400 damage every time you get an empowered auto attack. And remember that this rune has no cooldown, so every time you pick up another soul in a team fight, after any champion dies, whether it's a teammate or an enemy, you get another huge buffed auto attack. Jungle monster souls count for 2 points, cannon minions count for twice as much, and champion souls count for 3 times as much. Going for the champion souls is a much better use of your time than power farming. If you can have some successful early ganks, that's going to give you much more stacks much faster than if you just power farm the jungle. And by the way, I would only recommend playing this in the jungle because without playing it in the jungle, you're going to be lacking in stacks without having all of the jungle monsters. Dark Harvest is best against squishy enemies, and it's countered by tanks because remember, after you use your first auto attack, your keystone is not going to give you anything. So it's best if you can just kill a person with that one Dark Harvest proc, but against a tank, you'll do more damage with a different rune. So in the early game, both efficient farming and aggressive ganking are important, and you need to be able to find a balance. You never want to be sitting around waiting in a bush for too long. Only go for a gank if you know you're either going to get a kill or a summoner spell. And other than that, just spend time farming. And then in the mid to late game, grouping for team fights is very important, and farming is not as much anymore. It's so important to be in team fights because you can pick up your teammates' souls, and you can get enemy souls without even needing assists. If just 2 champions die nearby, that's as many souls as an entire jungle clear or 6 camps. So don't underestimate the importance of participating in kills. Now let's quickly talk about runes and items, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because if you want to find a specific build for any of these champions, you can find it linked on the top right corner of the screen. Just click the eye. So after Dark Harvest, the next rune is going to be either Cheap Shot or Sudden Impact. If your champion can proc Sudden Impact often, like with Jax's Q or Xin Zhao's E, then Sudden Impact is better than Cheap Shot because it will do more damage. But otherwise, if you can't use Sudden Impact, then instead take Cheap Shot, assuming you have crowd control abilities to actually trigger that one. And then next, I would always recommend taking Eyeball Collection because it gives you increased damage, and the other two options in this row give you 0 damage. Then finally, Relentless Hunter, very important on Dark Harvest for the out of combat movement speed, because remember, your empowered auto attack expires after 20 seconds after killing the jungle camp. So this increased out of combat movement speed is going to help you get to a lane more quickly and gank before your buffed auto attack expires. And then for the secondary, this was changed in patch 8.4. If you take Precision Secondary with either Domination or Sorcery Primary, you get some attack speed now instead of getting all attack damage for your stats. So on all 3 of these champions, I would recommend taking Precision Secondary now, because that attack speed is going to increase your clear speed, which is going to help you get stacks faster. And for the Precision tree, it's always good to take Triumph for the chain resets, because after you get a kill in a team fight, not only are you getting a reset on your damage, but you're also getting a chunk of health, so you can maybe stay alive for a long time and go for multi-kills. And then after Triumph, I would recommend taking Alacrity for even more attack speed. I used to take Coup de Grace, but it was nerfed, so now I always take Alacrity. Now for the items, there's a couple things in common across all 3 of these champions for Dark Harvest. You always want to start Machete for the faster clear, and you always want to rush Tiamat first. So I like to start with Bead, level 1, to save money on Tiamat, so I can try to get it on the first recall. But if you want to have a safer first clear and have more health, you can delay your damage a little bit and just go for the refillable potion instead. The Tiamat is always important to get as soon as possible with Dark Harvest because it's going to improve your early clear speed and give you increased income. And the earlier you can get that increased income, the better off you'll be. I always go for the Tiamat and Basic Boots first recall, which is going to cost you $13.50 if you started with a Rejuvenation Bead. And that's going to require you to get at least 1 assist or kill before recalling for the first time. And here are a few example full builds for each of these champions. All of these builds have Titanic Hydra, because that's the only good upgrade of Tiamat. And of course, Titanic gives you an auto attack reset, which is going to improve your burst damage, and auto attack resets have special uses on each of these champions. On Udyr, you can use this to help you get your second Tiger proc faster. On Jax, you can use this combined with your W auto attack reset to get 3 auto attacks quickly when you engage, which is going to give you a guaranteed ultimate proc, and of course lots of other damage. And with Xin Zhao, you can use this auto attack reset to make your knockup come faster after you engage. The goal is to just get level 3 as soon as possible with double buffs and go for a kill. The route is buff, wolves to buff. With Udyr, I would recommend always starting with blue on both teams, because Udyr can actually spend all of this mana to help improve his early clear speed, unlike with Jax and Xin Zhao, where I would just recommend starting with wherever bot lane is, because you don't need blue buff early. And if you just start with wherever bot lane is, you get a better leash than with top lane. So after you go from buff to wolves to buff, if you can't gank the nearby lane at level 3, just run into the enemy jungle and check if their second buff is still up and try to steal it. Otherwise, if you see the enemy jungler and they have less health than you, you can just try to 1v1 them. And if you do get an early kill, that's going to make it very likely that you're going to win the game, because remember, Dark Harvest is weakest in the early game, and if you can just survive past the early game, you're in a very good position. So when you're going for these early ganks, it's very important to judge risk. You don't want to push too far if you're not sure where the enemy jungler is, because if you die, it could be game over. After you die the first time to the enemy jungler, if they're now going to beat you in a 1v1, then you're screwed, because they can push you out of your own jungle and you can't even get stacks. Try to just go for the kills that you know you can get while making sure not to overextend and chase too far. That goes for every rune, but on Dark Harvest, the consequences are magnified. In order to kill your jungle as efficiently as possible, there's a few basic rules that you can follow. If you only have single target damage, which is only until you get Tiamat, then you want to attack the smallest monsters first, just to save yourself more health. So when you're attacking the wolves with the first clear, attack the small ones first. That's just because you want to have the least amount of enemies attacking you for the least amount of time. So If you can take out the smallest health ones first, then they're out of the fight as soon as possible. But if you attack the ones with the most health first, then you're basically keeping them all alive for longer than necessary. So then when you get your Tiamat, instead of attacking the small ones, you want to attack the largest ones first. And then, even after the largest one dies, you want to switch your focus to whichever small monster has the most health, because that's going to give you the fastest clear speed. Also, when you have your Tiamat, positioning is actually important, because you can notice if you don't stand in the middle of raptors, they don't all die at the same time, which is going to slow you down. So you want them all to die at about the same time to have the fastest clear. For Udyr, it's important to keep your passive fully stacked if you have blue buff for the fastest possible clear. Otherwise, if you don't have blue, just use Tiger Stance. For Jax, it's important to max your W for fast clear and keep using W every time it's up as an auto attack reset. The cost is pretty low, very short cooldown, and if you use it as an auto attack reset every single time, it's just going to improve your clear. And then Xin Zhao, you also want to max W, but on Xin Zhao, that's because that's going to give you an area of effect, which is sort of like Tiamat. It's going to help increase your clear speed against some camps. If you have a blue buff on Xin Zhao, the best ability order for the fastest clear is to start with your W and E, and then after that, use your Q, because that's going to reduce the cooldowns of your W and E. But if you don't have a blue buff, you don't want to spend that much mana, probably just use your W against Raptors and Krugs, otherwise just use your E. And kiting is also very important to help you move towards your next location faster. After every attack, you can input a movement command, and if you practice doing this as fast as possible, you're not going to actually lose any attack speed. You can move slightly towards your next planned location to improve your jungle clear speed slightly. Remember that ganking is always top priority before farming if you think you can get a kill or summoner spell. But otherwise, if your lanes are all pushed and you don't think you're going to be able to do that, instead you want to power farm. And your pathing is important so you don't waste a lot of time in the jungle. You want to plan your route 5 camps ahead of time and kill everything between point A and point B. Just keep moving on to the next closest thing to kill. The only time you want to skip something in your own jungle is the outer camps like the Gromp and the Krugs if you're instead planning to invade the enemy jungle. So for example, you're moving upwards through the jungle. You started with red buff and then moving on to raptors and then wolves and then blue, but then you notice that you're not going to be able to gank top or mid lane by the time you get there. So after taking your blue, instead of killing Gromp and putting you on the far edge of the map away from the enemy jungle, instead just go from blue to the enemy jungle and start farming that side now. It doesn't matter if you know where the enemy jungler is, because as long as you go into the enemy jungle with your buffed auto attack, you can probably win the 1v1 as long as the enemy jungler is not fed. Dark Harvest is better for 1v1s than anything else. So if you can't find the enemy jungler, just take his farm, but if you do find him, take his soul, and then take his farm too. Another important thing to remember about your pathing is that before you gank a lane, you want to kill a nearby camp so you can get a buffed auto attack. Remember, it only lasts for 20 seconds, so you got to kill something nearby. So if you wanted to gank top lane, let's say you're on the blue team, you can either grab this Gromp, this Scuttle Crab, or this large Krug. Don't spend time farming the rest of the Krugs, just grab the larger one and leave, because if you spend time killing the rest of the Krugs, your buffed auto attack is going to expire. And this goes back to my point about not wanting to wait around for a long time for a gank if you don't think you're going to get a kill. If you do wait for more than 20 seconds, you're not even going to have your extra damage anyways. Since each cannon minion counts for as much as 2 jungle camps, including your own team's cannon minions, if you can time your ganks for when both cannons are there, you can get a bonus 8 stacks before leaving, as much as 4 jungle camps in a lot less time. If you have a successful gank and the cannons are in the lane, kill the enemy cannon and then push your wave into the enemy tower, because the tower is going to focus your cannon minions first, so it's not going to take you very long in order to get the soul and be on your way. But if you have an unsuccessful gank, still wait in a nearby bush for a few seconds for the souls to drop. Unless the laners are freezing lane, then maybe just wait for one of them and leave. So if you know when cannon minions are going to be in lane, you can time your ganks around that. So you can farm when the cannons are not there, and then you can be efficient by ganking when the cannon minions are in lane. So here are the times on the clock that the cannon minions reach the middle of their lanes. Cannon minions reach the same spot after every 90 seconds. So after some practice, you can plan your routes around this, because you're going to eventually figure out how long it takes you to kill each jungle camp and how long it takes you to run from point A to point B. And that moves us on to our next topic, double procs. So there's a few different scenarios where you can go for a double Dark Harvest proc, which means after you use your first empowered auto attack, you instantly pick up another soul for more burst damage. The first scenario is when you're ganking a lane with a cannon minion there. So if you time it perfectly, you can attack the enemy the first time for the Dark Harvest proc, and then pick up the cannon minion soul that just dropped, or you can even smite the enemy cannon minion for the soul, and then you get another Dark Harvest proc. The second and third scenarios involve invading the enemy jungle. If you're farming the enemy jungle, you're in the process of stealing a camp and you see that the enemy jungler is about to show up. Maybe you see him on the map walking towards you. If you already have a buffed auto attack from a previous camp, you want to use that proc first before killing the current large monster that you're attacking. So then after using your first auto attack, you can smite the large monster, get another Dark Harvest proc, reset. The third scenario is if you're entering the enemy jungle and you see out of vision a soul appears, and then you know the enemy jungler is right there. So if you already have a buffed auto attack, you would first want to run in and attack the enemy jungler once before picking up that soul that just dropped. If you hit somebody with 2 Dark Harvest procs, it's pretty much an unbeatable 1v1. If you had a bad start, you maybe died early to the enemy jungler, he counter ganked you or something, and now he can beat you in a 1v1. So now, if he wants to, he can push you out of your own jungle and you can't even farm your stacks. In this case, you want to build tanky and focus on counter ganks and grouping for every team fight. At the same time, if you're losing and playing Dark Harvest, you want to delay the game as long as possible, so you don't want to force fights even though you're grouping up. You just want to kind of be there, you don't want to engage, you want to just kind of peel, play defensively, and the souls will still drop. The longer you can make the game last, the easier it's going to be for you to burst down the carries and the greater your chances of winning. In team fights, you want to always identify easy or isolated targets that you can try to one-shot. Never focus a tank, only squishies. So in choosing a target, you want to either assassinate the most fed enemy carries like the ADC or mid laner, or the squishy healers like Nami or Soraka. Try to decide on your champion focus priority before the fight. So this means looking at the enemy team comp, looking at who is fed, who's squishy. After the first enemy dies, you get another burst damage reset and you can move on to the next squishy champion and do the same thing. The potential for multi-kills with Dark Harvest is huge. If just 5 champions die near you, enemy or allied, that's as many souls as 15 jungle camps. If you get fed but your team fights are not going well for you, try split pushing instead. Dark Harvest procs also work against towers, so as you collect cannon minions you can keep getting Dark Harvest procs to help you burst down the towers. The best item core for fast tower takedowns on Udyr or Jax is Trinity Force plus Sterak's Gauge, while on Xin Zhao it is Warrior plus Trinity Force. But if you are maybe able to win a team fight, that's more important to try to do first, because then you're going to get a lot more souls. So only go to split pushing if team fighting fails, and only split push if you're fed enough to 1v1 anybody on the enemy team. And guys, that about wraps up this guide. So hopefully I didn't forget anything, and hopefully that all made a little bit of sense. I hope you all can win a lot of ranked games using this because it has worked wonders for me. Good luck in ranked, guys. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you again next time.